Happy Mindful Monday, everyone! I hope you all had a great weekend and a restful one. And here we are, ready to start a new week together. New goals, new plans, new learning, new growth. Today we are going to be talking about boundaries. I was thinking that since the last video on resilience touched on boundaries being one of the key components to being resilient, it would be a good time to talk about boundaries. So what boundaries are they're necessary basically for our protection and for our growth, for us to stay safe, as well as to have healthy relationships and in our life and a healthy lifestyle. So when you think of boundaries, the first thing that comes to my mind, I don't know about you, but the first thing that comes to my mind would be like a fence, maybe a fence around a house or a fence around a particular property. Let's say it's a property with a swimming pool. Okay, so something like that. And what the fence does is it keeps in the people that we want near the swimming pool on our property, right? And then it keeps them from getting out, right? Especially if it's little kids, let's say. And it keeps outsiders from getting in, right? So a great example of this would also be our front door, on the walls around our home and the front door. So if somebody wants to come into our home, they need to be invited, and we need to open the door to let them in after they request to do so. When boundaries don't function the way that they're supposed to, there is no door, which means that anyone can get in and out as they please, without our knowledge or our permission, or worse, we just leave the door shut all the time and never step outside or never let anyone else in when they are good for us, when it's a situation that's good for us. So it's not always people, it can be situations and opportunities as well, but understanding that having a healthy boundary and healthy boundaries period in plural, in our lives will really help us with our emotional growth. So sometimes boundaries can look like they're physical, right, as I mentioned with the door. Sometimes it can be actual physical like distance from someone or something. And so that way we are maintaining boundaries and doing what we need to do to be healthy, right? And then sometimes it can be time, taking time away from a situation or a person. A lot of vacation would sort of be something like that, taking time away from the regular life so that we can recharge and recoup and things like that. Emotional distance would be one where we need time for healing, and maybe there are specific individuals in our life that we are sort of needing some space from. And we just sort of need time to sort of think about it and process everything. And maybe we can't get away, so we can't use time, but we can use emotional distance until we figure things out. It could be taking a walk, something like that, right? So that we can process. So boundaries are really important. When they are used effectively, they can contribute to the health in our life, and when they are not, they can contribute negatively to our lives. So boundaries are established when we are little, when we are children, like most of the things in our life, really, in our personality. And at that point, if your family was one, for example, that was very fluid and everyone's sort of like intermingled in each other's lives, that would be an example of lower boundaries. And let's say you get married or you're in a relationship with somebody and they function happily and grow over their life, how many know you can have a problem, right? Or if there are boundaries where they're really rigid and you've been raised with, we don't really do anything together and we don't interfere in each other's lives or contribute to each other's lives at all, then when you're trying to get into a relationship, it might be really hard because the walls are so high and so thick that no one can get through them, and we are inadvertently sabotaging our lives and keeping good people and good situations out. There's also the scenario where boundaries have been breached. So for example, given that in a situation boundaries are if as parents or if our parents were the sort that breached boundaries and did things for us that we could have done ourselves, up to when we're older, or let's say in a situation where somebody breached a boundary and impacted you in a negative way, with some kind of abuse, and it's primarily coming from that would be a boundary breach. And so what would happen is that if that's not tended to, and if there isn't proper healing and you haven't discussed it with someone, if you haven't sought out therapy for it, what can happen is that your boundaries can shift, because in our minds it seems like, oh, it's normal to have these kinds of relationships, and for this boundary to like not be there or be non-existent in these situations, and so we find ourselves in difficult situations because of that boundary. So recognizing all of these different types of boundaries and how we can put up boundaries, it's really important to understand that having these healthy boundaries makes a difference, so that we can make healthy choices for ourselves and healthy choices for others, and learn how to open and shut our door accordingly in a way that is best for us and those that we love. If you have any questions about boundaries, let me know, and I'd be happy to discuss them with you or make a video to answer your questions. And until next week, have a mindful Monday, have a happy week, have a mindful week, and think about the different boundaries in your life and if you're using them effectively. Have a great week, everyone.